In 1968, the Beatles launched the Apple Records label with Our First Four, containing the very first 4 singles on the Apple label. And those would be Hey Jude by the Beatles, their first Apple single, #1, and Thingamabob, a TV show theme song written by Paul McCartney, recorded by the Black Dyke Mills Band. Jackie Lomax's Sour Milk Sea, written by George Harrison. And a bright new shining star, Mary Hopkin's Those Were the Days. The pride of the Beatles label, Mary Hopkin, today on another vinyl show. Ike Frazier Industries presents another vinyl show with Ike Frazier. Hey everybody, it's your old pal Ike Frazier, and today we're going to be talking about the first lady of Apple Records, Mary Hopkin. And here we can see on the Let It Be poster that Mary had one of the earliest Apple albums. Now, the first album postcard, I always believe, should have been called what her third album was called, Those Were the Days. That might have helped Postcard to be a more successful album in the United States. But as one of the first artists released on Apple, with the #2 single kept out of #1 by Hey Jude, Those Were the Days was a great success. Incredible. Get Back comes out, and Get Back stops Goodbye, which is the first US Apple picture sleeve in America, for sure. It's beautiful, black and white picture sleeve with a little tear coming from Mary's eye. #2 in the UK, Thelma Harbor, and that's the next one. Beautiful. Think About Your Children. Mary has more records practically than anybody. That is Knock Knock Who's There. And then, of course, what we originally started this with, the super rare Canadian copy from Quebec. Sung in French, but pressed like an American record, cataloged as Apple II. I'm not really good with foreign languages, so you might hear me mispronounce something in the video. But of the 3 albums, each one of them, Postcard, Earth Song, Ocean Song, which comes in an American gatefold cover, very nice, and her greatest hits, Those Were the Days, they're all worth having. They're great albums. Mary's a great singer. The Beatles said, well, she's a Joan Baez type, but we're going to change that. And you can't change a leopard's spots. She's a folk singer, always a folk singer, and she's a folk singer still today. Check her out at maryhopkin.com. There's no S on there, by the way, so if you ever hear me do it, it's a mistake, and if you ever hear other people do it, there's no S on there. It's Mary Hopkin. She's the best. We got the story of Those Were the Days here today, and Mary Hopkin's Apple story. See, I did it there, but that was in the possessive. But anyway, we'll see you guys another time, and I hope you enjoy the video. Got a lot of new viewers this last week, a lot of new subscribers. We appreciate each and every one of you. And like it, subscribe if you like, comment, tell us what you'd like to hear about, tell us what you think about Mary Hopkin, the first lady of Apple Records. I'm Mike Frazier, this is another vinyl show, and we'll see you next time. The first lady of Apple, Mary Hopkin. In 1968, Paul McCartney decided to go for a night on the town at the Blue Angel, where he saw Gene and Francesca play. Well, wait a minute, our story doesn't start there. It starts in Manhattan. In Manhattan in 1910, Gene Raskin was born, and he heard lots of folk melodies as a child in the city, and he took one of them and put his own words to it as Those Were the Days and gave it to the Limelighters, and they released it on their album, Folk Matinee, Those Were the Days. But wait a minute, our story doesn't start there. It starts with Vladimir Lenin, and Vladimir Lenin personally asks Boris Foreman to join the Red Army. Now, of course, how can you refuse a request from Lenin? You don't. So Boris took himself and he headed on out to Moscow. And he moved to Moscow, and pretty soon he was able to get his family to move out there with him. And they moved to a little place called clean pond in English, and he wrote a song wistfully called By the Long Road. And By the Long Road was written in 1924. And in 1925, the very popular recording artist Tamara, she recorded a version of it, and it was released in 1925. But a year later, Russian expatriate there, Alexander Vertinsky, if I'm saying that right, I apologize. He lived in Paris with other Russians who did not believe in communism, and he recorded a version in 1926. But the communists decided that that song, By the Long Road, was really anti-communist and anti-forward thinking because it was romantic and reminiscent of a time before communism. So it was banned by the Soviets. And unfortunately, a few years after being banned, they arrested Boris. And he was, during the Great Purge, he was arrested and held. And unfortunately, in 1948, he passed away. But now we fast forward 20 years later to 1968, and on May 4th, 1968, in the UK, British it girl Twiggy is settling down to a night in front of her television set for the very popular TV show Opportunity Knocks, and she sees a young Welsh singer, Mary Hopkin. Well, Twiggy knows that the Beatles are starting a new label, so she gets on the phone.
Hola, Paul McCartney here.
And she tells Paul McCartney about this young singer. Paul McCartney is excited to hear about it because he's looking for talent for Apple, and his mind goes back, and he thinks back to the night that he went out to the Blue Angel and saw Francesca and Gene play Those Were the Days, and he had wanted other people to record that song, but nobody believed in it like he did. And so, remembering that song as one of Apple's first records, it becomes Those Were the Days on Apple. And then we see John and Paul there launching the Apple. And the Beatles are very excited about this record because they just know it is going to be a hit and Mary is going to be a star. And she is really the first person on Apple who really gets the publicity. And we see here Peter, Paul, and Mary. That's Peter Asher, Paul McCartney, and Mary Hopkin. And back at the session is Mary and Paul at the session right there. And we see Mary and Paul with Richard Hewson, who was also the arranger of She's Leaving Home. And the girls there who sing on the chorus. Now, there was a competing version by Sandy Shaw, and fortunately, Mary Hopkin won out, and in America, she was held from the number one spot by Hey Jude, so Apple had the number one and number two single in the U.S. at the same time. Now, this record, it sold 8 million units around the world and was number one in 18 countries. And number one in Canada, of course, is one of those many countries. But the B-side everywhere was Turn, 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 the Pete Seeger song with Mary on acoustic guitar. But it was released with her singing it in French, and her singing it in Italian, and her singing it in Spanish. And there are other claimed versions. I haven't heard all the different language versions yet. But the launch party was quite a celebration held at the Tower Post Office Club there. And you see Mary opening her copy of Postcard right there. And everybody was there, even the postman, says the Daily Mirror. And so we see Paul with Mary. They're all very excited about the album, which has some songs by Donovan on it. And special guest Jimi Hendrix is there again, hanging out with Paul, getting a little chit-chat in. Postcard was released February 21st, 1969, and it went to number 28 in the pop charts here in the United States. And in the UK, it was a great success. It went to number 3. And, of course, Mary got a lot of press because, of course, she's the darling of the Beatles. And her next single recorded was Goodbye, a song that Paul wrote especially for her during the Abbey Road days. And you can hear that on the Abbey Road box. That went to number 13 and number 2. It was held off from number 1 by the Beatles' Get Back. Now, this article claims that George is going to write some songs for Mary Hopkin and that Mickey Most, is going to do some recording. George never writes any songs, But Mickey Most does show up, and he is ready to record Mary Hopkin. He's famous for recording the Animals and Donovan, and even more so, Apple's boss at the time, Mr. Alan Klein, he got Mickey a $1 million contract when he signed on with him in 1964. So Mickey's first record, Thelma Harbor, was released, and not quite the same success as her earlier records. It went to number 39 in the pop charts and 4 in the adult contemporary, but in the UK it went all the way up to number 6. Now, Paul McCartney had a little trick up his sleeve because he had always wanted to do Que Sera Sera, and he finally convinced Mary to do it. And in the middle of the Abbey Road sessions, he grabs Ringo, and Paul and Ringo are the only musicians beside the orchestrations to play on Mary's Que Sera Sera, released June 15th, 1970. Went to number 77 in the pop charts in the US, and adult contemporary, it charted even better. Now, Mickey Most produced the next single, Think About Your Children. Think About Your Children did not do very well, unfortunately, but in the United States it went to number 87. And so Mary's slipping a little, and as UK Apple 30, it did quite a lot better as it went to number 19 in the pop charts in the UK. Now, the next record that was coming out was Knock Knock Who's There, which was her song entry in the Eurovision contest. And that single in the UK made it all the way to number 2 in the pop charts. It was a big hit, Knock Knock Who's There. I think it's Love That's Calling. And number 11 in Billboard's easy listening charts, but on the pop charts all the way down to number 92. So now Mary hooks up with a different producer, Tony Visconti. And Tony is famous for producing T-Rex, of course, and he is the bass player and producer of David Bowie's records up to a certain point in the mid-70s, I guess. And so the next album that would be fresh from Apple would be Earth Song, Ocean Song, but Let My Name Be Sorrow was a single released right before then, and everybody liked it but said it was not very commercial. And unfortunately, it went to number 46 in the pop charts. And her next single, Water, Paper, Clay, it didn't even get in the charts at all, unfortunately. So Mary was kind of at a turning point right there. She had made the album that she had wanted to make with Earth Song, Ocean Song, and she had a big concert, but she really was not able to promote the album because she was at a summer camp series. The album only went to 204 in the US and did not chart in the UK. Then Apple puts out a greatest hits titled Those Were the Days, and here we see a demo copy from the UK. It did not chart. Later, here we see Paul and Linda and Mary together in the 80s. That's a great picture. Mary's still making music today at maryhopkin.com. You should check her out.
That was Mary Hopkin.
Now, what are some of the values of these? Well, you're probably going to be surprised. Mary doesn't sign anything anymore, and a signed postcard, promotional postcard from Postcard, sold for $85. The Japanese red vinyl with a beautiful gatefold cover. Now, these don't come up very often, and when you do see them, you ought to grab one because they're about a $100 record. I see, them go occasionally for $150. Super rare UK test pressing of Postcard. That sold for an incredible $1,225. The Honeymoon Song, a favorite of Paul McCartney's and done by the Beatles on the BBC, sold on eBay for $1,136. Earth Song, Ocean Song is about a $30 album, but its test pressing, and this is a UK test pressing right here, it sold for $220. Now, Those Were the Days, her very last album, that record goes for about $30 to $50, and it is a compilation of most of her singles. But the acetate here, or test pressing, went for $155, and then this is the acetate, not the test pressing. The acetate of the album sold for $916 on eBay. This is from Quebec, and a very small quantity pressed just for the French-speaking people of Canada. That sold for $350, Apple II. The Dick James unreleased demo of Jennifer Juniper by Donovan, that sold for an incredible $1,049. And this test pressing of an unreleased version of Que Sera Sera, especially arranged by Paul McCartney, sold for $1,500 on eBay. What's that, Paul?
That was Mary Hopkin, and this...
And we dedicate this episode to Boris Fomin, the original composer. Thanks everybody for watching.